What if a human car crash had a partner? We're talking about Kate Bishop, aka Hawkeye. Hi, I'm Nando, and in this series, I take a character from Marvel Comics. I talk about their history, their power set, their personality, and I give you some reading recommendations. And this is all because this week, this character is being introduced into the collectible card game, Marvel Snap. So we'll talk about the Marvel Snap stuff at the end, because most of this video, we're just going to be talking about the comic history of Kate Bishop. Now, I do a lot of these videos very frequently, especially recently. They've been somewhat obscure characters, Hydra Bob, Ajax. Even the Eternals aren't that significant in the larger Marvel Comics universe. This and a lot of the characters this month matter. These are characters who in my lifetime have come up and become some of them very popular. Some others have kind of, we haven't seen Speed that much, but Kate Bishop, I would say you could make the case it's gotta be her or Wiccan is the most popular member of the Young Avengers, the one that has broken out the most. So Kate Bishop is introduced in Young Avengers 1, written by Alan Heinberg, with art by Jim Chung, John Dell, Justin Ponzer, and Corey Petit. So real quick, let's set the stage in the Marvel Universe. The Avengers have just disassembled, which means Scarlet Witch did a bunch of bad stuff, managed to kill a couple of the Avengers, and then the Avengers decided to unavenge her. There were no more Avengers, so Avengers Mansion is just sitting empty at this point, and obviously they're still superheroes because there's X-Men, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, all those guys, and I think Iron Man, I imagine, was still doing Iron Man stuff, but just the idea of the Avengers was not a thing. But out of nowhere, a couple of kids started popping up, and they were clearly kid versions of the other Avengers. It was Patriot, Iron Lad, Wiccan, although at that time he was going by Asgardian, and Hulkling. And they were these four kids, no one could figure out what their deal was. It turned out one of them was Kang, and they were all brought together by some program the Vision put together. It was the Young Avengers Initiative or whatever. So they're just going around New York trying to help people be Avengers. They're making a big mess. The Avengers are not happy with it. They're we gotta do something about these kids. They end up rescuing people from a hostage situation at a wedding. And this is the wedding of Kate Bishop's sister. So Kate Bishop, this character, time we first see her, I'm not exactly sure how old she is. I'd say she's probably 16. She's on the older side of this group. I don't think she's over the age of 18 yet. I think when this team was introduced, they were all pretty young. But she's definitely not the youngest member of the team. And she does pretty quickly become the leader of this team. So I think you would expect the way she's written, she's the most adult of the team. So the Young Avengers show up at this huge wedding at this cathedral. They all make things kind of worse, but then Kate Bishop, the bridesmaid who is getting taken hostage, manages to beat up her hostage takers, and then they save the day and everything's cool. So Kate Bishop is given a lot of credit here for being better than the Young Avengers. She meets up with Cassie Lang at this point, Stature, and Cassie Lang's hey, are you part of that group? But she's not really, but I do kind of, I talked to them a little bit, and Cassie's oh, I actually need help getting back into Avengers Mansion. I used to live there kind of with my dad. Where's Scott Lang at this point? Okay, so Scott Lang and Hawkeye were both killed in Avengers Disassembled. They would both come back. Hawkeye came back pretty quickly. I don't remember how Scott Lang came back. It wouldn't last very long, but Cassie's basically I'm Ant-Man. I inherit his suit and all that stuff, so I'm just gonna go pick it up and I'll be the new Ant-Man. And Kate Bishop's you know what? All right, I'll come with you. So Kate Bishop goes with her. They run into the Young Avengers. The Young Avengers are you can't join our team. You weren't on the list. And Cassie's Cassie is the youngest, I'd say, member of the team. I think she's 14 at the time. She's I just want to go in and get my stuff. And Kate Bishop's basically I don't care about your list. We're going to do our thing. You can kick rocks. I don't care. And she just goes and does it. Now, she is, out of this group, the only member of the team without any superpowers. Because Iron Lad, we will learn, is Kang. He doesn't have superpowers, but he does have a really, really powerful super suit. Patriot, at this point, is thought to have powers. This is part of a blood transfusion he got from his grandfather, although that's not true. But at least as far as they're presenting, it's oh, these are all superpowered Avengers, and you're just some normal kid. You can't help. But clearly, she's very capable, and she's also real spunky, so she just kind of weasels her way into this group. The real Avengers show up, and they manage to trick the Young Avengers into standing in a room while they go talk outside, because they're we're gonna train you guys, you gotta go in your training room. And once all the kids are in, they lock the doors and they just leave them in there. While that's happening, Kate, who is not part of that team, just goes through the Avengers Mansion and just picks up stuff. And she grabs a bunch of things to make her proto costume, which at one point is called Hawkingbird, because part of it is Mockingbird's mask and Mockingbird's weapons. She also has Swordsman's sword and Hawkeye's bow and arrows. So she frees the team, and she's listen, I'm pretty much in charge at this point. I seem to be the only member of this team that knows what's going on, and I'm the one who keeps saving you guys, even though I don't have any superpowers. So clearly, you should listen to me. She gives Patriot Captain America's shield, which she also found while she was looking for stuff, and then everybody on the team is like, all right, she's cool. Also, her and Patriot like have a little bit of a thing. But again, it's because he's the most stubborn member of the team, and she is also the most stubborn member of the team, and they are kind of co-leaders at this point. So Kang shows up, they fight him, there's this whole thing where it's like, you're Kang from the future, so Iron Lad, you have to go to the future, otherwise we'll never have a future because this will never have happened, and people start fading out like Back to the Future. So eventually Iron Lad does go back to his original timeline, leaves the rest of these kids there, and everything's back to normal. Also, I just think this is funny during the fight between the Young Avengers and Kang. Kate Bishop and Hulkling managed to distract Kang so that Iron Lad is able to stab and, I guess, kill Kang. I don't think it's funny because there is that meme where people make fun of like what a Secret Wars movie will be, and where it's two characters talking to each other, and it's like, Wolverine, you and Spider-Man go distract Kang, and stuff like that. That meme has been done a lot, but she is one of the characters that has distracted Kang. I was like, that'd be funny. I don't know if that's in the Deadpool movie. If at one point Deadpool was like, Wolverine, you go distract Kang. Wolverine's like, what are you talking about? Deadpool's like, I don't know, that's just something kids say online, whatever. So Kate Bishop is part of this team, and she is the young Hawkeye on this team. And because Kate Bishop is loaded, she's got tons of money. Her family is a very influential New York family. Obviously, that's why they were able to rent out a cathedral for a wedding. She is able to supply the team with a hideout and costumes. So basically at this point, she's like, I'm the Iron Man of you guys. I'm financing this team, and I'm also kind of in charge of it. We'll get to some other Young Avengers stories when those characters come up. Like, we'll talk about Children's Crusade when Billy shows up. Kate Bishop mostly at this point is the only Hawkeye. When the other Hawkeye comes back to life and we start doing like Kate Bishop and Hawkeye stories, I think that's when she gets really interesting. Although, like, if you read these Young Avengers books, she's the best one. For at least from my opinion, she's the one that's the most fun to read, because she's the kind of not just sarcastic, but like she's the only character that seems to know what's going on, and I enjoy that. Also, I think it's fun that her costume is purple. Not because of Hawkeye, kind of is, but really it's because that's the color of the dress she was wearing at the wedding that she kept having to wear that day when they ended up fighting Kang, that became like her signature color. So it's not like in the MCU where she's such a big fan of Hawkeye that she just picked that. Although, since it's her sister's wedding, maybe she picked those colors, maybe it's because she likes Hawkeye, which we'll get to. But eventually Hawkeye shows up and they work together. And this is best captured in the Matt Fraction, David Aja Hawkeye series that everybody loves. It is frequently brought up as one of the best series Marvel's made in the last couple decades. It's the one book that if you have a friend who's like, I want to get into comics, what should I start reading? Like, I want to, Marvel stuff, characters I'm familiar with. That's almost always the first one that people recommend because it's very accessible. The art's obviously gorgeous, and the stories are very fun and light. It's not a humongous amount of reading, which is always nice. I think this, it's obviously one of the most successful series. It's a bummer that Matt Fraction doesn't do stuff for Marvel anymore, because like he was really good at writing this. This series saw a Hawkeye who was clearly like not doing great. Every issue, or like a bunch of issues, would start with him like falling out of a window saying, this looks bad. And that's where you get the description, human car crash. It's something Kate says about him later on in the book. But he and Kate work together, and he's basically like, listen, Kate, I like working with you. We're both good at this. You might be better at Hawkeye stuff, like Arrow stuff, than I am. It's unclear. We're not gonna have a contest or anything, but I'm just saying, like, you're very good and skilled. And like, I have really bad relationships with women. Like, I'm Hawkeye, and that's like a problem for me, but that's not something that's going on between us. So it's perfect. Like, we should work together. I can mentor you, and you can like, help. And at that point, like, Kate Bishop already really wanted to be on this team, but that's kind of the explanation that Hawkeye gives, like Clint Barton in issue 2. I would say the most famous issue of there's a couple of them, especially in the beginning of the book, but number 3 of this series is an issue called Cherry. I would say this is like required reading for Kate. This is the issue that they kind of do in the TV show where they're driving around in a fancy little red, God, I don't even know what it is, like Charger or something like that, or Challenger, and they're shooting all the trick arrows at the goods, but they're not communicating well, so some of them work, some of them don't. And I think the thing that I love about Kate Bishop, and what I think a lot of people that like Kate love about Kate Bishop, is that like Hawkeye's a mess, right? Hawkeye's like drinking coffee out of the pot. He's going to the hospital because he keeps breaking bones and stuff. Kate Bishop is here, and she's like, Hawkeye, you gotta get it together. But she also does not have it together. Like, she is almost equally, she's not quite as big of a mess as he is, but this isn't the kind of character that could read as like a kid who knows everything, who's kind of here to teach the adult how to be smart. Like, she also makes mistakes. Kate's problem, I would say, is she gets in way over her head, and she doesn't take no for an answer. So like in the 4th and 5th books, the tape, Hawkeye's like, I gotta go do a cool thing, a spy thing, get a tape back. You can't go, stay here. And she ends up sneaking in, and then she, takes over for Madame Mask and almost does a great job. But then eventually she gets found out and almost killed. They have to be rescued. But like that's kind of a Kate Bishop story. She bites off way more than she can chew. But a lot of the times, like she can almost chew it. Like she's without being a superpowered person, she's incredibly capable, good at improvising. So she can get her way out of difficult situations. All New Hawkeye Volume 2, I think, is where we get Kate's origin, although I think we've heard it before at this point. But there we learn that Kate Bishop, incredibly wealthy, grew up with her mom and dad. Mom died, but dad was always around, and he was like on business, and he was somewhat mysterious, but in the same way that like a distant, rich parent is in one of these books, until Kate started looking into it. And she found her dad was doing mafia stuff. He was working with a villain called the Matador, and has to do with like real estate. And the Matador's job was to like get people off of Bishop property that they wanted to develop or something like that. So Kate hears about that, and then she's like, oh, something's up. I gotta keep following them. Eventually accidentally gets kidnapped by the Matador because she's sneaking around. And then the Matador, who's like mad at her dad now, tries to ransom Kate Bishop. And Kate Bishop tries to escape. She almost does, but then she's almost caught until she is saved by an arrow from Hawkeye. And the rest of the Avengers show up and they save her too. But this is Kate's like moment. And again, something like this kind of happens in the show where Kate's like, all these other Avengers are like a god or a super soldier, a rich guy, but you're just like an arrow guy and you saved me. And like, I want to be like you, and I can. So Kate goes all out, like training, martial arts, obviously marksmanship, stuff like that, and becomes like just as good as Hawkeye by applying herself. And that's the thing with Hawkeye, right? Hawkeye grew up in a circus, and he was just kind of Hawkeye because he had to be. And Kate Bishop, you could do that. It's almost like One Punch Man. If you decide to do it and train and put in the hours, you can become Hawkeye. You just really have to want to. And in this universe, like, why would anybody want to? You want to be Iron Man, you want to be Captain America. But like, if Hawkeye saved you, and that was a very formative moment, especially at this point where your dad turned out to be a bad guy, so you really lost a father figure. It's like, oh, this Hawkeye guy. Now that's what, a parent should be. And that's what like a mentor I should look up to. Eventually she does leave Hawkeye because of that. She's like, Hawkeye, I've always wanted to be Hawkeye, but I've wanted to be it because like, that's what you were. And I want to go do my own thing and figure out what being Hawkeye means to me. I will say also, they never make a distinction in the comics which one is Hawkeye and which one is Kate Bishop, which one is Clint Barton. On the cards of Marvel Snap and like in comics, I really think Marvel has to commit to this. If you're going to have two characters that both share the same name, one of them doesn't get to be Hawkeye, and then the other one is Kate Bishop Hawkeye. Same way it's like Spider-Man and then Miles Morales Spider-Man. If they're both Spider-Man, that first one is Peter Parker Spider-Man. And I don't love it when in comics characters all keep the same name and they're just like, I'm, Flash and you're Flash and we're all Flash, and there's like 8 Flashes running around at the same time, because it's a call sign that is used to distinguish who is who in battle. Like sometimes characters will bring it up. They're like, we all keep using the name, but it's the same name. We should probably figure out something so we're not all just screaming Batgirl at each other in our headphones and nobody knows who anybody's talking to. The reason I don't mind with Hawkeye is because, and this comes up in some of the books, Hawkeye's a mess. So of course Hawkeye's not going to have a good system for identifying themselves against the other Hawkeye. They're just like, who are you? I'm Hawkeye. And they're both too stubborn to give up the name or like pick a new name. And they're like, well, I'm the best Hawkeye. And I'm like, well, actually, technically, I'm the best Hawkeye. So the Avengers are like, fine, you're both Hawkeye. And they start calling him on the radio and they both answer. Like, it's like that. That's fun. I think like this, having the same name thing is a dumb thing for these characters to do, but it works with Hawkeye because they do dumb things. They make mistakes, get in trouble. Hawkeye's part of the Young Avengers as well. There's a second run written by Kieran Gillen, who I love. This is the run that features a lot of other characters that are more contemporary members of the Young Avengers. This is Marvel Boy, this is Kid Loki, this is America Chavez. America Chavez will be, I don't want to say her best friend, but maybe Kate Bishop's most consistent friend, besides Hawkeye, obviously. And this team also has Hulkling and Wiccan. In this book, Kate Bishop and Marvel Boy are dating, and he's, a pretty boy, and she's, trying to have fun. It's nothing incredibly serious. What I like about Kate Bishop is that, like characters in comics, and I bring this up all the time, have like a long-term, Mary Jane or one true pairing, whatever you want to call it, that just they stick with forever. And I do find that kind of dull, especially when it's like Mary Jane, because then when they break that cycle, it's like, well, you need a really good reason, and it never is. And it's just kind of to shake things up, make the characters like more difficult. Kate Bishop like had a thing with Patriot, Marvel Boy, and then later in the West Coast Avengers date someone else. But like, I like that she just kind of feels like an adult who's like finding herself, and she's having these relationships with characters and moving on. She's a character who feels more like a work in progress than some of these other characters. And again, very endearing in a medium where you're like talking to Captain America, the most good and forthright man that ever lived. It's nice just to have like a scrappy little underdog. So Kate hangs out with the Young Avengers, then she goes over and uses some of those connections to form the West Coast Avengers. This is when Kate's basically like, I gotta do my own thing. I'm my own person. I'm gonna start a detective agency in LA. So she goes to the West Coast, and then that eventually becomes West Coast Avengers, which is a team at that point, which was like Quentin Quire, America Chavez, Hawkeye Clint Barton showed up for a little bit, Gwenpool, and she dated a guy named Fuse. They met in her solo series when she went to LA, but then went together into the West Coast Avengers team. So that one is the one where all those characters that I just mentioned were from. They were dating at the time. They eventually split up. Fuse has a power that I think is good. He's got the Absorbing Man power, but also the reason it works and the reason it's like a smart use of that power is he also hangs on to some vibranium at all times, just in case he needs to pull it out of his pocket or whatever. I think it's like in a ring, but he can use that to turn himself into vibranium. They should all do that. Absorbing Man, take notes. So I was looking this up because I couldn't remember his name. And what I learned was he and Marvel Boy apparently got together later, which sure. But like, I was like, I don't know when that was like said or when that happened. Apparently that is in the book. Like, and I keep saying book, like comic books, people call them books, but I'm talking about like book, like novel. It's called Hawkeye Bishop Takes King. It was written in 2023, so it just came out. I've never read it before, but apparently this is something that Kate Bishop says in this novel. I might read it one of these days, but in the novel, Kate Bishop goes and fights the Kingpin. That's why Bishop takes King. Actually, that's cute. It's funny that, as far as I remember, that doesn't come up in the show where she fights the Kingpin. But yeah, that's a book that is out that I have not read. Marvel does a couple of those now, and yeah, I should probably keep up with that because I guess it's canon. As far as powers, she's pretty much Hawkeye. She's got incredible aim. She's an expert with hand-to-hand combat. She's pretty clever. She's scrappy. She doesn't have any other superpowers though. She's rich. That's the one big difference, is she can just buy stuff that she needs, which is handy. She apparently also plays the cello, something I also saw on the Wikipedia page that I just looked at to find out that guy's name. And personality, I think the best way to describe Kate Bishop, besides scrappy, which is a good word, but I think the one that I always associate with her is pluck. She's very plucky. She has a lot of like can do, or even her origin story where she learned her dad was a villain is because she snuck into his car and followed him and got in trouble and, was able to weasel her way out of it. And that's something that even in the original Young Avengers books, when they're talking about her, they kind of describe it's like, you're Iron Man and you're a young Hulk and you're the girl who can talk her way into anything. And that's, she's very spunky. She doesn't take no for an answer. But like I said, at the same time, she frequently gets in over her head. And that's what you love about Kate Bishop. So Kate Bishop was played by Haley Steinfeld in the series Hawkeye. I guess she has a cameo in one other Marvel thing, but it's pretty small. And it's pretty similar backstory. Dad's dead instead of mom, but mom is also in league with, New York super organized crime. She was saved by Hawkeye, not in the exact same way as part of the Avengers, like Avengers 1 events, the Battle of New York, and she idolizes Hawkeye, trains to become Hawkeye, becomes his biggest fan, and then they work together and become kind of partners. I think Haley Steinfeld nails the vibe of Kate Bishop. I think her and Jeremy Renner have the right amount of chemistry in that kind of, bickering kind of partners. Oh, this one thinks they're better than the other one. He wants to do what he wants to do. She wants to do what she wants to do. They both think they're right. It's fun to watch, and I hope that we see more of her in the future. She just seemed like she's one of those fan favorite characters, and especially because Yelena and her are kind of friends or something, or at least they know each other's names. I'm sure like Florence Pugh being popular will help keep Kate Bishop in the stories, although like, Haley Steinfeld is very popular. I know she's like a musician, but she's also, Spider-Gwen, and she was in that Bumblebee movie. She's in, Edge of 17. She's a big star. Another one of those young talents that Marvel managed to sweep up into the MCU, and it's like, good. This could pay off for a while because she's very good in that role and she's got a lot of fans and stuff like that. Okay, so Kate Bishop books, what to read. I would say Young Avengers 1, it's her first appearance. I think it's a good introduction to Kate. It's a good introduction to the concept of the Young Avengers, but also it shows why she's not exactly like these guys and how she fits into this team. And yeah, I think it's a fun Kate Bishop book. After that, you definitely want to do the Matt Fraction, David Aja, like Hawkeye series. I'd say issue 3, Cherry, is the best one. And it is a perfect like intro to that book. Very digestible, very fun art. And if you've seen the show, very reminiscent of the chase scene from the show. And then I would say you get most of her backstory in All New Hawkeye, Volume 2. So this is written by Jeff Lemire with art by Ramon Perez, Ian Herring, and VC's Joe Sabino. It's not as popular, obviously, as the Matt Fraction, David Aja stuff, but it's like really good. I think it's a good, solid series, nice and short too. That is the thing about these comics and like Kate Bishop. One of the things that I think I also like about reading Kate Bishop and Hawkeye comics, usually not incredibly wordy. There's a lot of action, but also they just don't talk that much, or when they do, they'll like give each other a look and one of them will go, okay, and then they'll go do something. So I don't know, that is fun. But yeah, I would say those 3 series if you want to read 3 good Kate Bishop books. I do like her solo series. I think she's had 2, and apparently there's a book, and then there's the West Coast Avengers series. But I would say those 3 are, more than enough to give you a good sense for who Kate Bishop is. And watch the show. I think the show does a solid job. So Kate Bishop is the season pass card for the Young Avengers season. In Marvel Snap, she is a 2-cost, 3 power with the on reveal effect, add 2 arrows to your hand. So we haven't seen this card in action, so I don't know exactly how this works. I don't know if they can be the same arrow or if they are different arrows, but there are 4 so far. There is an acid arrow, a basic arrow, a grapple arrow, and a pim arrow. They all have different abilities that are all very similar to kind of what you would expect. The acid arrow switches sides, so it's a 1/2 that goes over to your opponent's side, takes up space on the board. That's great. Basic arrow, 1/1 if you play a card at this location next turn, plus 3 power, so it works like Hawkeye usually does. Grapple arrow is a 1/3 on reveal after you play your next card, move it to this location. So that works kind of like Iron Fist plus a Ghost Spider. And then you have the Pim arrow ongoing if your sided location is full, plus 3 power. This is another 1/1, and this works like Ant-Man. So she's got the same vibe as Nico Minoru, and that's, I think, a very smart way to do this character, especially because Hawkeye is one of those characters that got a card that was very simple because they wanted Hawkeye to be like a character that you would get immediately. There was always room for Hawkeye to be more creative because he does have all these different trick arrows and he really likes them, like in that issue with the card saying you got to respect the trick arrows because they're cool. So I like that Kate Bishop has taken up that in Marvel Snap. I do think it's not quite as dependable as Nico, because with Nico you can kind of assume over the course of 6 turns, if you get her in turn 1, she'll cycle through most of the abilities. If there's one you're waiting for, there's a good chance you'll see it. With her, it's like you get the cards you get, and then either you use them and they're good, or you don't. So because she's an on reveal, adds the arrow, she's going to be good with Collector. I think she'll be a pretty good all-around card. I don't know, like maybe a bounce deck. I don't know who. Okay, so friends of hers is who she works well with. It doesn't not work well with America Chavez. I don't think she, has a lot of synergy with her. She works okay with Hawkeye. I mean, you could put her Hawkeye-ish arrow, the regular arrow, and Hawkeye in the same spot, and then that's pretty good. Like, I think a Kate Bishop deck is filling up spots, so I think that makes sense. It's cute that she got the acid arrow because that's what the White Widow has. Yelena, a friend of hers in the movies and shows, so that makes sense. And I mean, you could even say the Pim arrow, yeah, they have that on the show, but also she's friends with Stature, and like that's a character that she meets first in this Young Avengers series. Who else? Like Jeff the Landshark kind of worked well with. Gwenpool, I'm going to say works pretty well with, because what you can do is you can power up the arrows, which is something I don't think people are expecting, but because then what you got like a 1/3 or a 1/5, so that could be pretty useful. Who else is she friends with? Spent time with Jessica Jones because she was a detective for a while, I think. They're kind of friends. Hawkeye and Hawkeye's Rogues Gallery, but none of them are in the game yet. Kingpin, nothing interesting with Kingpin. And the other Young Avengers, so you got Patriot, I would say no, because none of her cards would sync up with Patriot. You've got Iron Lad, I would say also no, although Iron Lad copying Kate's abilities can be pretty handy. Stature, there's no discarding, so it won't matter. Wiccan, I think she might actually work pretty well with Wiccan, because getting 1-cost cards, guaranteeing 2 1-cost cards that you can play on turn 4. I think the way Wiccan works, that you're trying to use all of your energy and then you get more energy later. So I guess like having those arrows might be handy. Hulkling doesn't matter. Like Hulkling doesn't work well with. Oh, Marvel Boy, kind of, I guess. Marvel Boy actually works pretty well with Marvel Boy because Marvel Boy powers up 1-cost cards. There's all for arrows are 1-cost cards. So Marvel Boy plus Kate Bishop together, it's a good combo. So I would say Kate Bishop overall, in terms of like her design, I think it's very creative. I think it's very true to her character. As far as variants go, not too many loaded up right now, which is fine. That could change, and they tend to not put too many variants for the season pass card in until like the future seasons. I will say the Flaviano variant that is the season pass variant is gorgeous. I love the color. I think she's got what you would call like the bisexual lighting, right? That's that pinks and blues and purples, and I think that looks great, especially with the little bandages, which are something that she's known for. Yeah. So later this week, I think, is when I will put out the video about Marvel Boy, because he's supposed to come out the same week. Got a lot of Young Avengers to cover. But for now, Kate Bishop, very important character in Marvel Comics. I think a character that we're going to see a lot of going forward. Not sure where she is right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if when the Young Avengers become important again in Marvel Comics, they do another Young Avengers run, maybe featuring her as maybe a mentor for another, new team of youngsters. I don't know, but I think Kate Bishop has a good future in Marvel. Besides that, watch my videos. You know what I did? If you enjoyed this video and you like Kate Bishop, I made a pitch for a Young Avengers movie. So if Marvel ever wanted to do that, one of my videos on my Nando V Movies channel is just like, what could a movie like that be like? And I think it's pretty good, and I think it tells a good Kate Bishop story. I think captures the spirit of her. So go ahead and watch that. Subscribe to this. Subscribe, follow, whatever you could do on your platform. That's all I got. Stay safe, and I'll see you around.